When the Zephyrian Empire's most elite battle group arrived at the third planet from a yellow star, they expected to find another primitive world ripe for conquest. Their sensors detected crude chemical rockets, simple radio transmissions, and what appeared to be a species barely capable of leaving their own atmosphere. The invasion should have been routine. A few orbital bombardments, some ground forces to mop up resistance, and another world added to their vast empire. But as Admiral Kethvar gazed down at the blue marble below, watching the pathetic attempts of the humans to scramble their military forces, he had no idea that his battle group of 12,000 vessels was about to encounter something that would redefine everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare, survival, and the terrifying ingenuity that emerges when a species faces extinction. The humans didn't just fight back. They did something far worse. And in doing so, they unleashed a nightmare that would haunt the Zephyrian Empire for generations to come. The first sign that something was wrong came 3 days after the Zephyrian battle group established orbit around Earth. Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Sovereign's Wrath, watching the tactical displays with growing unease. His mandibles clicked nervously as he observed the human response to their arrival. The primitive species below should have been cowering in terror. Instead, their radio chatter had increased tenfold. Their military installations buzzed with activity, and most disturbing of all, they seemed to be studying his fleet. Long-range sensors detected dozens of crude telescopes and radio dishes pointed directly at his vessels, methodically scanning each ship in his battle group. Captain Zixthu approached with data tablets clutched in his lower arms. The reconnaissance teams have completed their initial assessment of the planet's defenses. The results are peculiar. Kethvar turned his massive frame to face his subordinate. Like all Zephyrians, he stood nearly 3 meters tall, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the bridge's blue lighting. 6 arms sprouted from his torso, each ending in razor-sharp claws capable of tearing through most known materials. His species had conquered 47 worlds through a combination of superior technology and sheer physical dominance. Define peculiar, Captain. Chemical rockets for space travel. Their military forces use projectile weapons that fire metal slugs. By all accounts, they shouldn't pose any threat to even our smallest patrol craft. Then what concerns you? Zixthu's antennae twitched, a sign of deep anxiety among his kind. It's their behavior, Admiral. They're not responding like any species we've encountered before. Most primitive civilizations either surrender immediately upon seeing our fleet, or they attack with desperate, uncoordinated strikes. These humans are doing neither. Kethvar moved to the main display, which showed a real-time view of Earth's surface. Cities glowed like scattered jewels across the dark continents, seemingly peaceful despite the massive alien fleet hovering overhead. But the Admiral's enhanced vision caught details that would escape lesser beings. Everywhere he looked, there was movement. Coordinated, purposeful movement. "Show me the traffic analysis," he commanded. The display shifted, overlaying transportation patterns across the human world. What Kethvar saw made his primary heart skip a beat. Instead of the panic-driven exodus from population centers that usually followed first contact, the humans were moving with surgical precision. Military personnel were being repositioned, civilian populations relocated to specific zones, and, most unnervingly, massive quantities of raw materials were being transported to previously unknown facilities. "Sir, there's something else," Zixthu continued. "Our linguistic analysis teams have been monitoring their communications. The humans have multiple languages, but they've rapidly established standardized military communication protocols. In 3 days, they've achieved what takes most species decades, and their leadership? That's perhaps the strangest part. They have multiple governing bodies across their planet, often in competition with each other. But since our arrival, they appear to have formed a unified command structure. They're calling it the United Earth Defense Coalition. In his 2 centuries of military service, he had overseen the conquest of dozens of worlds. The pattern was always the same: fear, chaos, desperate last stands, and eventual surrender. But these humans were exhibiting none of the expected behaviors. Instead, they seemed to be preparing for something. "Have they attempted any communication with us?" the Admiral asked. "Yes, sir. Multiple attempts across various frequencies. Basic mathematical sequences, pictographs, even crude attempts at universal translator protocols. They seem eager to establish dialogue." This gave Kethvar pause. Most species either tried to hide from superior forces or immediately attacked them. The humans were actively trying to communicate, which suggested either remarkable courage or catastrophic stupidity. "Put me through to their primary communication hub," he ordered. Within minutes, the bridge's main screen flickered to life, showing a human face. The creature was smaller than Kethvar had expected, with soft pink skin and tiny eyes. But those eyes held an intelligence that made the Admiral reconsider his initial assessment. "I am Secretary General Chen Lu of the United Nations, speaking for Earth," the human said in accented but clear galactic standard. The fact that they had learned the common tongue of the galaxy in mere days was disturbing enough. "I am Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Empire's 4th Battle Group. You will surrender your world unconditionally within 6 rotation cycles, or we will take it by force." Secretary General Chen's expression didn't change. No fear, no anger, just calculating assessment. "Admiral, we would like to propose an alternative. We're aware that your empire has conquered many worlds through superior technology. We offer something different, a formal challenge."
Kethvar's 6 arms tensed. "Explain. Your species values strength and combat prowess."
"We propose a series of escalating military engagements. If you defeat us soundly, we surrender without further resistance. If we prove more capable than anticipated, perhaps we can discuss alternative arrangements." The Admiral nearly laughed. The audacity of these creatures was almost admirable. "You wish to challenge the might of the Zephyrian Empire with your primitive weapons? We wish to challenge your assumptions about primitive weapons." Something in the human's tone made Kethvar pause. There was no bravado, no desperate defiance, just quiet confidence backed by something that looked remarkably like anticipation. "Very well," the Admiral decided. "We shall begin with a simple demonstration of our capabilities. Prepare your finest military installation for destruction." "Admiral, we've prepared something even better. There's a small island in our Pacific Ocean, approximately 200 kilometers from any civilian population. We've placed what we consider our most advanced military hardware there. Feel free to engage it with whatever you deem appropriate." The transmission ended, leaving Kethvar staring at a blank screen. In all his years of conquest, no species had ever invited him to attack them. The entire interaction felt like a trap, but he couldn't identify the mechanism. "Sir," Tactical Officer Mordun called from his station, "we've located the island the human referenced. It appears to house several dozen vehicles and approximately 200 personnel. Launch a single strike craft. Have it destroy the installation with minimal force. I want to see how these humans respond to their first taste of defeat." The sleek Zephyrian fighter departed from the flagship's hangar bay, its pilot confident in the face of such primitive opposition. The craft's shields could withstand direct hits from nuclear weapons, its weapons could level city blocks, and its speed exceeded anything the humans could field by several orders of magnitude. As the strike craft entered Earth's atmosphere, Kethvar monitored its progress on the tactical display. The pilot reported no resistance from the surface, no attempt at interception. The humans seemed content to let their forces be destroyed without even attempting a defense. "Beginning attack run on the target island," the pilot reported. "Multiple structures visible, several vehicles that appear to be military in nature. No defensive fire detected. Proceed with the strike. Firing primary plasma cannons now." The brilliant streams of energy lanced down from the strike craft, and for a moment it seemed like the engagement would end exactly as expected. The plasma beams struck their targets with devastating accuracy, and several explosions bloomed across the island's surface. But then something unprecedented happened. "Admiral." The pilot's voice carried a note of confusion. "The targets appear to be empty. I'm reading no life signs, no energy signatures from the vehicles. It's as if they placed decoys for us to destroy." "Scan the island more thoroughly." "Sir, I'm detecting movement below ground. Significant movement. It appears the entire island is—" "Wait, sir, I'm reading massive energy spikes coming from." The transmission cut off abruptly. On the tactical display, the strike craft's signal vanished in an instant. No explosion, no distress call, no debris field. One moment it was there, the next it simply ceased to exist. The bridge fell silent. In 3 centuries of military operations, the Zephyrian fleet had never lost a single craft to a primitive species. The silence stretched until it was broken by Zixthu's voice barely above a whisper. "Admiral, we're receiving another transmission from the human leadership." Secretary General Chen appeared on screen again, but this time he wasn't alone. Behind him stood representatives from what appeared to be every nation on Earth, all wearing expressions of grim satisfaction. "Admiral Kethvar, thank you for that demonstration. Your pilot is unharmed, by the way. We've simply contained his vessel for study. We hope this illustrates that our species may not be as primitive as your initial assessments suggested." Kethvar found his voice with difficulty. "What did you do to my strike craft?" "We used what you might call adaptive countermeasures. You see, Admiral, while your empire was conquering worlds with superior technology, humanity was developing something else entirely. We call it creative problem solving." The Admiral's tactical mind raced. Somehow, these humans had neutralized a craft that should have been invulnerable to anything they could field. But more disturbing than the loss of the fighter was the implication behind the human's words. "You've been preparing for this," he stated, rather than asked. "Admiral, humanity has been preparing for this possibility since we first looked up at the stars and wondered who else might be out there. We've had contingency plans for alien contact since the middle of the 20th century. When your fleet arrived, we simply activated protocols that have been refined for decades. You couldn't have anticipated our specific technologies." Chen smiled, and for the first time Kethvar felt something he hadn't experienced in over a century of military service: uncertainty. "Admiral, we didn't need to anticipate your specific technologies. We needed to anticipate the general principles behind them. Energy-based weapons, advanced materials, faster-than-light travel. These concepts aren't alien to us. We simply lack the industrial capacity to implement them on a large scale. But defending against them? That's a different problem entirely." The human paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "You're welcome to retrieve your pilot and his vessel, Admiral. We've left them in the same location where your strike craft disappeared. Consider it a gesture of good faith before the real engagement begins." "Real engagement?" "Admiral, what you just witnessed was our response to a single strike craft. Tomorrow, we'd like to see how your forces perform against our orbital defense grid. Nothing too elaborate, perhaps a squadron of your fighters against one of our satellites." The transmission ended again, leaving Kethvar staring at tactical displays that no longer made sense. Somewhere in the span of a single failed attack, the entire nature of this conquest had changed. The humans weren't defending themselves in desperation. They were systematically testing his forces. "Sir," Mordun called from his station, "I'm detecting the strike craft's signature on the surface. It appears to be intact and operational." "B. Life signs?" "Pilot is alive and unharmed, but the craft's systems show evidence of extensive analysis. Sir, they've been inside our technology." Kethvar felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. The humans hadn't just neutralized his strike craft, they had studied it. In the space of a few hours, they had gained access to Zephyrian technology that represented centuries of advancement. But more troubling than their technological acquisition was their attitude. They weren't acting like a species fighting for survival. They were acting like researchers conducting an experiment. And somehow, Kethvar was beginning to suspect that he and his entire battle group had become the test subjects. As night fell over the blue world below, the Admiral found himself facing a possibility that had never occurred to him in 2 centuries of conquest, that perhaps the humans weren't the prey in this engagement. Perhaps they were the predators. The thought should have been absurd. His battle group possessed enough firepower to crack continents, technology that these humans couldn't hope to match, and the experience of conquering dozens of worlds. But as he watched the lights of human cities twinkling peacefully below, unafraid despite the massive alien fleet hovering overhead, Admiral Kethvar began to wonder if his empire's long string of easy victories had made them complacent. And if so, whether they were about to pay a price for that complacency that none of them had ever imagined possible. Admiral Kethvar had spent a sleepless night cycle reviewing every detail of the previous day's engagement. His most experienced analysts had examined the recovered strike craft, and their findings only deepened his unease. The humans hadn't damaged the vessel. They had temporarily disabled it using principles that his engineers were still struggling to understand. The containment field they employed, Chief Engineer Tolmar was explaining, appears to be based on localized gravitational manipulation. But Admiral, their energy requirements should have been massive. We can barely manage such precision with our most advanced capital ship systems. Yet they accomplished it from an underground installation on a small island. Kethvar mused, his mandibles clicking rhythmically. Sir, there's more. While the craft was contained, they introduced microscopic analysis probes through the hull without breaching it. Somehow, they phased matter through our composite armor as if it didn't exist. The Admiral turned to face his chief engineer fully. Explain. We believe they're using quantum tunneling effects, but scaled up far beyond what our physicists considered possible. Admiral, in 6 hours of study, they learned more about our technology than most species discover in decades of contact with the Empire. Before Kethvar could respond, Communications Officer Valian called from her station. Admiral, we're receiving another transmission from the human leadership. They're requesting permission to begin what they're calling Phase 2 of the evaluation process. Put them through. Secretary General Chen appeared on screen, but the Admiral noticed immediate changes. The human wore different clothing, some kind of military uniform, and behind him was a command center that definitely hadn't existed the day before. Banks of monitors showed displays that looked suspiciously similar to Zephyrian tactical systems. Good morning, Admiral. We trust your pilot recovered well from his brief captivity? What do you want, human? Direct. I respect that. Admiral, yesterday's exchange was illuminating for both sides. Today, we'd like to propose something slightly more challenging. We've positioned one of our defensive satellites in high orbit. We'd be interested to see how it performs against, say, a squadron of your finest fighters. Kethvar studied the human's face, looking for any sign of deception or desperation. He found neither. Instead, Chen displayed the same unsettling confidence that had marked their previous conversation. What makes you think a single satellite can challenge a full squadron of Imperial fighters? Admiral, yesterday you assumed that a single strike craft could destroy an island installation defended by primitive humans. How did that assumption work out for you? Very well. I'll deploy a full squadron. 12 fighters should be more than adequate to destroy whatever defensive system you've constructed. Excellent. The satellite is in geosynchronous orbit above the Pacific Ocean. Your pilots will find it quite easy to locate. The transmission ended and Kethvar turned to his flight operations commander. Launch Squadron 7. Full combat loadout. I want that satellite reduced to debris. 20 minutes later, 12 of the Empire's most advanced fighters were accelerating toward the human satellite. Each craft possessed shields that could withstand direct nuclear strikes, weapons capable of destroying city blocks, and pilots with decades of combat experience. Squadron leader Krexvar commanded the formation with calm professionalism. Target acquired at bearing 77 Mark IV. Single satellite, approximately 50 meters in diameter. No visible weapon systems, no defensive screens detected. Proceed with the attack, Admiral Kethvar ordered from the flagship's bridge. Squadron 7 attack formation. Weapons free. The 12 fighters spread into a classic engagement pattern, approaching the satellite from multiple vectors to prevent any possible escape. Their sensors showed nothing unusual, just a cylindrical object covered in what appeared to be primitive solar panels and communication arrays. Beginning attack run, Krexvar reported. All fighters, fire on my mark. Mark. 24 plasma cannons fired simultaneously, their deadly energy streams converging on the satellite from all directions. The combined firepower was enough to vaporize a small mountain, but the plasma beams never reached their target. Instead, they struck what appeared to be empty space around the satellite and simply stopped. The energy hung in the void like frozen lightning, forming a perfect sphere of contained destruction around the human device. What? In the void? Krexvar began, then his instruments screamed warnings. All fighters, emergency evasive maneuvers. The energy is redirecting. The plasma that had been frozen in space suddenly reversed direction, racing back toward the fighters that had fired it. But it wasn't simply reflecting. It was being focused, concentrated into deadly spears of energy that tracked each fighter with impossible accuracy. Squadron 7 scattered, their pilots' training taking over despite the unprecedented nature of the attack. But the reflected plasma pursued them like living things, adjusting course to follow every evasive maneuver. One by one, the fighters' shields failed under the assault of their own weapons, magnified and focused beyond anything they were designed to withstand. Emergency beacons filled the communication channels as pilot after pilot was forced to abandon their craft. Within 5 minutes, Squadron 7 had been reduced to escape pods scattered across Earth's upper atmosphere. Recovery shuttles launching now, Admiral Kethvar ordered, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. I want those pilots back aboard immediately, Sir Tactical Officer Morden called out. The satellite is transmitting. On screen. Instead of Secretary General Chen, a new human appeared. This one wore the clothing of a scientist and stood in what was obviously a research facility. Behind her, dozens of humans worked at stations displaying real-time images of the destroyed fighters. Admiral, this is Dr. Sarah Mitchell, Director of Earth's Applied Physics Research Division. I wanted to personally thank you for this opportunity to test our containment and redirection systems. What did you do to my squadron? We've demonstrated a basic principle of human defensive philosophy. Why build bigger weapons when you can simply turn the enemy's weapons against them? Your fighters were destroyed by their own plasma cannons, just redirected through what we call a gravity lens. Admiral Kethvar's tactical mind was racing. The humans had somehow created artificial gravity fields precise enough to manipulate energy weapons in real time. The technology required was beyond anything in the Empire's arsenal. Admiral, Dr. Mitchell continued, your pilots are all safely recovered and unharmed. We've transported them to the same Pacific island where yesterday's engagement took place. They're free to examine our facilities, ask questions, and return to your fleet whenever they choose. Why? The simple question seemed to please the human scientist. Because, Admiral, we want you to understand exactly what you're dealing with. Earth's defensive strategy isn't based on superior technology, it's based on superior adaptation. We study, we learn, we improvise, and we overcome. The transmission shifted to show the interior of the underground facility where the 12 pilots were currently being held. But held was clearly the wrong word. The Cepharian warriors were moving freely throughout the installation, examining human technology, while human engineers explained the principles behind their systems. Your pilots are quite remarkable, Dr. Pate Mitchell continued. Their questions demonstrate tactical thinking that we find very impressive. For instance, Flight Leader Krexvar immediately identified the power requirements for our gravity lens and asked how we solved the energy generation problem. Despite himself, Admiral Kethvar found himself curious about the answer. We use what your pilot called cascade fusion, linking multiple fusion reactors in a quantum-synchronized array. The concept came from studying your own power systems, though we've made some modifications that your engineers might find interesting. The Admiral realized that the humans weren't just defending themselves, they were recruiting his own pilots as unwitting intelligence sources. Every question his warriors asked revealed their thinking, their tactical preferences, their technological assumptions. "Bring my pilots back immediately," he ordered. "Of course, Admiral. We'll have them returned within the hour. But first, would you like to see what we've learned from yesterday's and today's engagements?" Before Kethvar could object, the display changed to show a cutaway diagram of a Zephyrian strike craft. But this wasn't just any diagram. It was more detailed than the blueprints in his own technical databases. "Fascinating design," Dr. Trust spelt. Mitchell narrated, "Your ships use a triple redundant shield system with adaptive frequency modulation, very sophisticated. The plasma weaponry operates on contained magnetic bottle principles, and your faster-than-light drive is based on dimensional folding rather than pure speed enhancement." The Admiral felt his primary heart stop. The humans had reverse-engineered technologies that the Empire had developed over centuries, and they had done it in less than 2 days. "But here's what we find most interesting," the scientist continued. The diagram zoomed in on the ship's computer core. "Your artificial intelligence systems are remarkably advanced, but they're designed around centralized processing. Everything flows through hierarchical command structures. What's your point, human? Our approach is different. Instead of centralized intelligence, we use distributed problem solving. Every human brain is capable of independent thought, creativity, and adaptation. When we link those brains together through communication networks, we create a collective intelligence that can outthink any individual system." The display changed again, showing Earth's communication satellites and fiber optic networks. But now Admiral Kethvar could see something he had missed before. The entire planet was functioning as a single, massive computer network. "Every human on Earth is currently contributing to our defense effort," Dr. Mitchell explained. "Scientists and universities are calculating optimal shield frequencies. Military strategists are developing attack scenarios. Engineers and civilian industries are designing new defensive systems. And even school children are running mathematical models on their personal computers." The scope of what the humans had accomplished hit Admiral Kethvar like a physical blow. They hadn't just unified their governments, they had unified their entire species into a single problem-solving entity. "You see, Admiral, when your empire conquers a world, you're usually facing a single government, a single military, a single approach to defense. With Earth, you're not fighting a planet, you're fighting an entire species that thinks collectively while acting independently." The transmission ended, leaving the Admiral staring at tactical displays that showed his 12 pilots being transported back to orbit aboard human spacecraft. But these weren't the crude chemical rockets his initial reconnaissance had detected. These were fusion-powered vessels that incorporated design principles from his own fleet. Sir Captain Zixthu approached hesitantly. "The pilots are requesting permission to share their observations with our tactical analysis team." "Granted." What did they learn? The humans had been preparing for this scenario for over 50 years. Every science fiction story, every military simulation, every theoretical physics paper about defending against superior alien technology, they've been using them to develop actual defensive strategies. Admiral Kethvar processed this information with growing unease. "They've been planning for us specifically, not us specifically, sir, but for any technologically superior alien force. They've identified common patterns in how advanced civilizations might approach conquest and developed countermeasures for each scenario. The Admiral moved to the main display, looking down at Earth's blue surface with new understanding. They turned their entire entertainment and scientific community into a strategic planning organization. It appears so, sir. Flight leader Krex Var reports that the humans showed him over 2,000 different theoretical approaches to defeating energy weapons, faster-than-light drives, and shield systems. They've been gaming out these scenarios in their universities, their military academies, and even their popular culture for decades. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Kethvar began to doubt the outcome of an engagement. His battle group had never faced an enemy that had spent generations preparing specifically for them. Every advantage they possessed had been anticipated, studied, and countered by human ingenuity. Sir, Communications Officer Velian called from her station. We're receiving another transmission from Earth. This time it's marked as urgent. Secretary General Chen appeared on screen once again, but now he was flanked by representatives from what appeared to be every major military and scientific organization on the planet. Admiral Kethvar, thank you for these illuminating exchanges. Bailey, we believe we now have sufficient data to proceed to the next phase of our evaluation. What do you mean by next phase? Admiral, so far we've demonstrated our ability to neutralize individual craft and small squadrons. Tomorrow, we'd like to test our capabilities against something more substantial. Perhaps one of your capital ships? The Admiral's mandibles clicked rapidly. You wish to challenge a heavy cruiser with your primitive defensive systems? Admiral, I don't think you understand our position yet. We're not challenging your ships with our defenses. We're offering you the opportunity to attack us with everything you have, so we can demonstrate why humanity has survived as a species for over 200,000 years. Chen leaned forward, and for the first time, Admiral Kethvar saw something in the human's eyes that chilled him to his core: anticipation. You see, Admiral, your empire conquers through superior technology. Humanity survives through superior adaptation. Every challenge makes us stronger. Every enemy teaches us new capabilities. Every impossible situation becomes an opportunity for innovation. The human paused, then smiled, with what could only be described as predatory satisfaction. Your attack on Earth isn't our extinction, Admiral. It's our graduation to the galactic stage, and we intend to graduate with honors. Admiral Kethvar had summoned his senior staff for an emergency strategy session. Around the conference table sat the most experienced military minds in his battle group, but their usual confidence had been replaced by something he had rarely seen in Zephyrian officers: uncertainty. Status report, the Admiral commanded. Fleet Intelligence Chief Knoxval spoke first, his voice unusually hesitant. Admiral, our analysis of the human capabilities grows more disturbing with each engagement. They're not just adapting to our technology, they're improving it. Ju explain. The fusion reactors powering their defensive systems are now operating at efficiency levels 20% higher than our own. The gravitational manipulation they demonstrated yesterday requires computational power that should be beyond any planetary civilization. And Sir Knoxval paused, his antennae drooping with what could only be described as dread. Continue. They're learning faster than we can analyze them. Every hour we delay gives them more time to understand our capabilities and develop new countermeasures. At their current rate of technological advancement, they'll match our capabilities within days and exceed them within weeks. Captain Zixthu leaned forward. Admiral, perhaps we should consider the possibility that immediate, overwhelming force might be our only viable option. If we deploy the entire battle group simultaneously. You want to bombard the planet from orbit? Admiral Kethvar stated. Sir, every military doctrine in the Empire emphasizes the importance of decisive action. The humans have demonstrated that they become more dangerous with time. We should end this before they become an actual threat. Chief Engineer Tolmar spoke up from across the table. With respect, Captain, I believe they already are an actual threat. The technical readouts from our recovered fighters show that the humans have reverse-engineered our quantum processors. Sir, they're replicating technology that took us centuries to develop, and they're doing it in days.
Then, we destroy them before they can complete their analysis, Sixthu insisted.